Welcome back to the On Track video cast. And today we're talking about something I've never talked about yet on this video cast, which I feel like I should have by now, because it's the leading cause of infertility for women. It's also one of the main causes that I see in my own practice for weight loss resistance and just troubles with weight, which is PCOS, Polycystic Ovarian Syndrome. So to do that, I have all the way from London, UK, Jimi Sayo. I hope I said that right.
You did, actually.
Oh, yeah. Good.
That's an invisible H, Sayo.
Okay, Sayo. So Jimi is a clinical hypnotherapist and Havanine practitioner. She prides herself on having trained with some of the world's best trainers in hypnosis in her 11 years of practice. And her style of hypnosis is almost melodic for her clients. I love that. She decided to specialize in working with women with polycystic ovary syndrome when she noted the number of clients coming to her for weight loss seemed defeated by their PCOS diagnosis. She's the host of the PCOS Summit, which is coming up soon, and helps to spread knowledge about PCOS that is seldom available for women when diagnosed. Welcome, Jimi.
Thank you. Thank you.
I could have kept going. Her bio was like a page long. You have so much great information about yourself. You just are doing some really unique stuff, though. Your work is very unique, I have to say. She was just telling me what a Havanine practitioner was, which we'll get into maybe towards the end, but hypnosis and Havanine. So tell me a little bit about how you got into the work of hypnosis and how you discovered this stuff about PCOS.
Well, this is quite interesting because I'd had a religious background. I spent some years as a born-again Christian. I no longer consider myself a born-again Christian, but it had left me very suspicious of and wary of certain things, including anything occultic. And in my opinion, when I see hypnosis on TV, I think to myself, there's no way you can make them do that without the aid of the devil. I was so sure. And in those days, there was one hypnosis show, Paul McKenna's hypnosis show. I wouldn't watch it because I didn't want to be influenced. That's how strongly I felt about hypnosis. And then one day, somebody said to me, back then I was working in web design, and this lady said, there's something you'll be good at. In fact, she left me a voicemail message, said, there's something you'll be good at. Give me a call. And I was intrigued. So I rang her up and I said, yes, what's this about? And she said, I think you could be a really good hypnotist.
You could do the devil's work.
I was offended. I was really offended because it's like someone coming to me and saying, I want to hire you as a hip woman. And I'm thinking, what about me gave you the impression I could do that? And I think she picked up from my tone, the displeasure, and said, why did you say it like that? And I told her what I thought of hypnosis, that, I'm not into that kind of thing. And she said, no, it's not like that. And she recommended a book by a lady called Rachel Copeland. Can't remember the name of the book, but it's about hypnosis. So I ordered it from Amazon. I thought, okay. And I read it. And I remember going through page after page and thinking, really? This isn't about some kind of psychic skill or some kind of superpower? That this is really just understanding how human beings process information, whether it's sight, sound, touch, taste, whatever, how we process it, and how using that information can trigger certain experiences. So then I thought, right, will this actually work if I, little me, do this? Because I wasn't born with the skill. And I got a couple of volunteers, and one of them was class textbook. And I was sitting there thinking, is he pretending? But he said, no, it was really good. The other one wanted to prove he couldn't be hypnotized. And so he wouldn't let it happen. And it's a concern some people have is about whether hypnosis can force you into something. No, if you don't want it to happen, you can resist it. But what's the point, especially if you're paying?
Yeah.
So that's the hypnosis thing. But one of the bread and butter of most hypnosis practices is weight loss.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yes, because it overcomes things like motivation, emotional eating, sabotage, self-sabotage. It deals with a lot of those things.
How?
Reasons.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is the reason why people yo-yo diet. Back and forth. You see the celebrities, for all that's in it for them to maintain their slim body, next thing you know, they pile the weight back on. So there is something going on fundamentally in the core that needs to be addressed for the person to effortlessly be able to do what they need to do to control their weight. Okay. And I talk about, instead of saying weight loss, I talk about weight management, weight control. Because when you think about it, Karen, when is loss ever a good thing?
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yes. I like that.
You know, I asked one of my a male client, I said, is there ever anything in life that you think you'd be happy if you lost it? You know what the cheeky man said? My wife. He didn't miss something, and then you apologize. No. But
okay.
The idea of loss is never a good thing, whether it's an earring or a pen or a phone. We have this unconscious thing that says, find it, find it, find it. And if you lose weight, there's that unconscious part of you thinking, we're going to find it. Don't you worry. We're going to find it. And all that part has to do is bring about the behaviors, self-sabotage, emotional attachments, that suddenly have the person going back to old behaviors. And every time a person loses weight and then gains it again, finds it again, they also find a little bit more. You know, so it's like it's like finding a pen and there's a bit of dirt on the pen. So the pen's a bit heavier than it was. You asked about PCOS and how it came into it. As I was saying, weight. And I ran a Groupon offer. I had a lot of people come to me for the group. Ladies, they were defeated. They didn't believe cancer. The first time I actually forgot that she mentioned it. Then it came up again and again. And I thought, okay, first of all, I need to know, is it true that you can't lose weight if you got PCOS? Is it true you can't get pregnant if you got PCOS? And the only way I could find this out was by looking for information. And there wasn't really that much information then. This is about 2011, 2012. And then one day I thought, run a summit, get all these people together and ask them questions. And so that's what I've done. It's the third year now. It's going to be next month. No, this month, actually. Yeah, this month. And the information I began to pick up made me realize that what is lacking in current PCOS treatment is that we are picking at symptoms, individual symptoms. So if a lady spends all her money on IVF treatment in order to get pregnant, and she's an overweight mother and develops gestational diabetes while pregnant, and if she has a baby that starts struggling through life with their own weight issues because she was overweight while pregnant, not only did she not treat the PCOS by having the IVF treatment, she's now started a new generation, male or female, that's either going to have PCOS in their lifetime or other metabolic disorders or pass it on to their own female offspring. So that's why it's important to understand the core of what's running through the body and the mind in order to deal with PCOS, not to deal with weight or fertility or anxiety, insomnia. They're all held together by a string.
Right, like those are just the symptoms. So are you talking more about the emotional base that you've come across in your practice that you believe is the creation or the base of the PCOS?
I think PCOS is like most other chronic conditions and sometimes diseases. You go to the doctor and the doctor's sort of looking at your brain, your blood, your skin, the tissue. Whereas one thing I would always ask a person when they've got any issue, if it's anxiety or something, or insomnia, I'll say, can you remember when last you were able to sleep without a problem? When last was sleep effortless? I'll ask a lady with PCOS, when did you get diagnosed? Typically, a bit like endometriosis. She's got the diagnosis about 6 to 10 years after going back and forth to the doctor about different symptoms. And no one's made the connection yet. You know, I can talk to somebody and they've only got to mention 2 or 3 things. And I'm already thinking, how do I bring it up with her that she may have PCOS? You know, and so this is what happens. It takes so many years to get that diagnosis. And then as soon as the diagnosis comes, the doctor's now looking at the ovaries or the weight issues, you know, insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, wherever they are in the journey. Whereas my belief, as with any other chronic condition, is ask questions. Because the unconscious mind is like a little child genius that comes up with astounding insights and comments. You know, you have those kids and you're like, wow, that's clever for your age. But you couldn't allow that kid to run a country. As bad as Donald Trump is, you couldn't let the kid take over from Donald Trump, you know. But, you know, so it's sort of like the unconscious mind is amazing, but there are limitations. It will take things literally. For example, I remember a male client I had, and again, we were trying to get behind his weight issues and why he'd been overweight most of his life. He knew he needed to shed the weight, etc. And we had a breakthrough during, I think, about our 3rd session. We'd had other breakthroughs, other insights, where clients have this aha moment and they see the connection between the behavior, overeating, emotional eating, whatever, which is a symptom. They see the connection between that and an event in their past, typically between being in the womb and age 7. Because we are already in a very highly hypnotic state from the womb to age 7. That's why kids will believe that there's a monster under their bed. Vivid imagination. They'll believe in Father Christmas, the tooth fairy, because they can visualize it. And this is what happens with the unconscious mind. Something happens. In this man's case, he had a physically abusive father. And on his father was always dismissive and whatever, and physically violent. And on one occasion, he said his father picked him up by the neck and pinned him against the wall. And this tiny, scrawny little boy is just there with his legs dangling. And in that moment, when his father put him down, he vowed to eat all his food so he could be too big for his father to pick up in that humiliating way.
Wow.
Because obviously he must have been hearing the message since he was young that you need to eat your food to grow. Yeah. And that day he got it. You did that because I'm tiny and scrawny. I'll make it impossible. So now he's in his 50s, approaching his 60s. But that little boy that was humiliated in that way hadn't updated the software. So he was still running on the software from when he was little. No one's going to pick him up by the neck now in his 50s. It ain't going to happen. He was a beefy guy, he'd beat you up. Not going to happen. And once he realized he had that connection, it made it so easy for him to start to do what he needed to do. And he actually told me the next session, he said, you know what, I am saving so much money now. Because every Friday they would order a whole load of takeaway Chinese in the family. A whole load of it was their ritual. And he found that he just could not eat what he used to eat. So he was ordering less and he was spending about half, because he was eating most of it previously. He was, you know, saving money. So it's just that little tweak in the unconscious mind to realize there's no more danger. It happens also with sexual assault victims, where quite often there's a feeling that they were picked on because they were attractive or slim, or again, they've been handled during the assault and they were so aware of their fragility that, number one, they want to make themselves too big to be thrown around or overpowered, and also not to be attractive to a predator. I'm not saying this is the case with every overweight woman, but it does come up often enough. And when you consider where we are now in 2018, that 10 years ago, men like Harvey Weinstein were assaulting women with impunity. And those women did not feel they could be heard or believed if they spoke. And what do you think that does to that woman and her self-esteem and how she treats herself or allows herself to be treated? And the other thing that is fascinating about us as human beings is the sort of the genetic transfer of traumatic events. And one amazing way this happens, apart from those cells I told you about that are so clever.
Yeah.
Which is why they have talk about descendants of Holocaust victims who are not in the camps, who are affected. They just have this sense of foreboding and higher levels of anxiety and drink issues and things like that. Even though it wasn't discussed in their homes what happened, they kind of remembered but didn't go into detail. They're affected by it. And when you think of women in particular, when a woman is born as a baby, she's born with all the eggs she will ever get to fertilize in her lifetime. She was born with them. That means that her potential babies with her during her gestation, they've been present with her in her mother's womb when her mother was born with her eggs, and her grandmother as well. So you got this connection through the womb. And events that have happened to maybe a grandmother or great-grandmother, it's like there are little remnants of it. Sort of like a sense of, that feels familiar, that sounds familiar. I don't know why. It's like I've been there before. And it's often through this sort of genetic passing in a person. So, you know, my work with any kind of chronic condition, and particularly PCOS, I want to see how much that person knows about their mother's own life, her conditions. Sadly, we don't quite have that level of openness. So somebody with IBS will not realize that one or both of their parents had IBS because it's such a secretive condition. It's never been discussed. But when you ask them, they'll say, yeah, actually, yeah, mummy did used to dash off suddenly to the loo without warning. But you kind of joked about it, but you didn't realize it was because she had this condition. And many women with PCOS, if you ask them about their mother, their grandmother, they may note that there have been miscarriages, hysterectomies. There might have been a lot of bleeding, or mother laid up in bed a lot with bad period pain. And quite often, because PCOS hasn't been properly diagnosed until maybe the last 10 to 15 years, it could well be that that mother, that auntie, you know, that grandmother, that could be what was going on in her life, but she never got to know.
Yeah. Oh, I see this in my practice all the time. And I'll ask that question too. Like, do you know anyone in your family that had an autoimmune condition or something? They're like, oh, and then they'll come back a month later. Yes, I found out my mom actually has celiac and I had no idea. And, you know, even I just recently found out I was hypothyroidism. And then I'm asking my mom, I'm like, do you have hypothyroid? And she's like, no, but my mom has it. And her sister has it. And the list started to go on. And I was like, Mom, you should be going and getting checked. She's like, maybe I should be. So I actually made all my sisters and my mom all go get checked, who everybody was in the lower range. Wow. Not all hypo, but everybody was very low in the range of hypothyroidism. I was like, there you go, right? Who knew?
Exactly. And see, now this is what is interesting, because a lady with PCOS might feel she's the only one in the family that has it. But again, we look at individual resilience. And it could be that she's more susceptible to stress, or she's been exposed to a trauma that the others didn't get exposed to, or they all got exposed to that trauma, but she was more affected by it. And it's a sad fact in life. And again, this is not related to PCOS. This is just a kind of scenario that we like to have heard of, yeah. That you might have a man who has been sexually abusive to his daughters, more than one. And sometimes you have a situation where none of them realize they thought they were the only one. They might even have thought they were the special one. Then they feel betrayed when they realize, actually, no, there were others as well. Or sometimes they feel helpless, like they let down a sibling by not protecting her because they didn't believe that that would happen. Or it may be it was an open family secret. They all knew. They were just like, you know what, we're going to get out of this house one day. But what you'll find is that one of those girls will descend into alcoholism and all kinds of emotionally coping mechanisms, drugs or whatever. Then you're going to have the one that's successfully transformed herself into the housewife, baking cookies and raising the kids and fostering, etc. And then you might have the other one who's sort of like, you can't really tell how she's affected, but she may have a slight tendency to be affected by things. But individual resilience determines how we react to things. And that's why I will often ask a lady, what was going on in your life when you had the first noticeable symptom that you would later years down the line realize was PCOS? And it could be she changed schools, or she got bullied, or she got humiliated. Often there's something, and even if she can't consciously remember, using hypnosis to get the person into a relaxed state, you can start to sort of like, it's like following the breadcrumbs to, or, you know, that children's story. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like following the breadcrumbs of the emotions. Mm-hmm. How one emotion leads to that event and that emotion leads to that event. And then suddenly they are recalling an event from childhood that they've never consciously remembered. That's the power of hypnosis. They'll say, I haven't thought about that in years. They knew it happened, but they hadn't thought about it. But suddenly they can see how it can be connected. Because the unconscious mind is the one that sort of, well, yeah, we've got this information stored away in the archives. And yeah, I think you're ready to confront it again without being re-traumatized. So that's why it's really important to find out a little bit about what a person's gone through. Mm-hmm. And work on their resilience to be able to sort of like reconcile what had happened. If there's anyone that needs forgiving, forgiveness is powerful. It's so powerful. Forgive those people. Let it go. Don't hold on to it, because holding on to these things can literally almost be like a cancer, or a PCOS, or an endometriosis flaring up in the person. And these things, their symptoms will often be compounded by stressful events. So they're at work, they got a bullying boss, or they got a male colleague that likes to feel them up. He thinks it's funny to pinch their bum. And you're sort of like always thinking about, oh, that guy, is he near me? Is he going to do it? Whether he does it or not, you've gotten yourself into that stressful state. And we live in a society where chronic stress has become a pattern, flooding the system with cortisol, saying, do we need to fight or do we need to run? And because our sedentary lifestyle means that we haven't got the muscle development that would prepare us for that fight or flight, we're getting flooded with the cortisol. And it's a bit like getting dressed up. You put on all the makeup and you don't go anywhere. You know, and if you're putting on toxic makeup, you're putting toxic stuff on your skin and you don't go anywhere. So you've exposed yourself to the toxins for nothing. And we get flooded with the should we run or should we fight hormone every day, sometimes every hour, without knowing it. And in the good old days, I'll say, this was a time when the saber-toothed tiger would appear. And everybody gathered around the campfire would say, tiger, and run. And run as fast as your well-developed muscles would take you. And then when you stopped hearing the roaring and the screaming because you knew you had caught somebody, you'd come back to the camp. Right, who did it get? Oh, dear God, that was awful. However, you've had a chance to run that cortisol out of your system and the adrenaline. So it's not staying in there pickling you, pickling your organs, pickling your guts, pickling your adrenal system, you know, affecting the brain, which is thinking, you were supposed to run and you didn't do anything. You sat there behind your computer. You didn't run. This is what's happening with many conditions, but in particular PCOS, when women are exposed to stress, the cortisol is shot out, but they have nothing to do with the cortisol. And what does the brain do when it gets cortisol? It wants something sweet. It wants sugar, because it's anticipating that we need to do some fast thinking. Yeah. And so then the woman finds herself in this craving thing where it's like, why don't I want to eat an apple? Why is it the donut I want? Is it because of the stress? That shut off the cortisol, which requires the sugar. And the quickest way for the brain to convert, for the body to convert into the energy it needs, is through carbohydrates and sugar. So we'll reach for that canned drink, sweet drink. And you think there's that burst of energy. Oh, no, it's the insulin that's flooded the system. And then, you know, with the pancreas, and then it's tried to sort of put the sugar into the non-existent muscles because that person isn't doing enough, you know, metabolic exercise. And that's where the insulin insensitivity comes in. You see, it's a vicious cycle. And that's why, in my mind, the mind is the most important step to working on PCOS. It sounds so obvious, but until you do that, you can have all the IVF you want. And the IVF might help you. By the way, women with PCOS, it's not infertility they have, it's actually subfertility. So it's sort of like, it's a challenge for them to get pregnant. But actually, they could be quite fertile in the right circumstances. And so quite often, a lot of the treatments for PCOS are dealing with the symptom. So, yeah, it's sort of like the last resort, the big guns that the doctors and the dermatologists bring out for a lady to use for adult acne that won't go away. And the price she's going to pay for using that cream, the mood swings, the suicidal thoughts. But you know what? She's still got the PCOS. Even if it gives her beautiful skin, she's still got the PCOS. Mm-hmm. And heaven knows what it's going to do next to the body. On an individual basis, what you need to do when trying to link, if there is any connection between a traumatic event in that person's life or in a previous generation, because I have seen it happen, what you need to do is find out on a case-by-case basis, what do you think is the positive benefit in this thing happening? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, one thing that fascinates me about PCOS, and I need to say this carefully because I don't want it to cause offense, but you can't ignore the fact that if you had one of those line drawings of a woman, it's as if PCOS has systematically, like a sniper, picked off each feature that makes a woman, that makes her distinct from a man.
Yes.
It's making her bald. It's giving her hair on the face. It's giving her hair on the nipples. Which woman wants hair on her nipples? You know, it's giving her fat around the belly. So she's a bit like a man that's been drinking lots of beer. It makes her snore like a man at night. Not very ladylike, you know. It hampers her fertility, her ability to get pregnant and be a mother.
But yet I see it raise like sexual desire because of the testosterone going up.
Yeah. Do you know there's a suggestion that there's a higher rate of bisexuality and lesbianism amongst women with PCOS? There haven't been any. I think there's one fertility clinic in London had done some kind of brief survey. And I think they found there was a higher number of same-sex couples coming for treatment. But that could just be because that they don't qualify for free fertility treatment. Maybe that's why there's that disproportionate number. Who knows? But yeah, the number of things that PCOS does in a woman's body, mm-hmm. and quite often there can be a kind of a rage against being a woman because of the injustices. The things we have to do, how hard we have to be aggressive, assertive. We're being assertive in the workplace, but it's maybe to a point where being a bit more aggressive than we would have been, because we want to be respected and we want to be able to put in that extra work and not take time off. Even when there are so many reasons why we just want to, oh, you know what, I'm tired. And I'll tell you a really, really freaky story that's about me, even though I don't know if I got PCOS or not. You know why? I've never tried for a baby. Quite often women find out they have PCOS when they're trying to find out why they don't get pregnant.
Yes.
I've never had to go through that. For all I know, maybe because I had persistent weight gain. I've still got fat around my middle. You know, I've had various things that, who knows, could be a PCOS symptom. When my mother was pregnant and expecting me. Well, let me backtrack a bit. I've always had a water phobia, scared of swimming, no matter what. And a few years ago, I was with my mother, we're watching TV, and somebody was suing their gynecologist for something that went wrong during delivery. And my mum said, had it been now I had you, I could have sued that obstetrician. I said, well, why? Now, I knew that she'd had a long labour with me, but I'd never actually asked her why. And this is the thing about asking your parents questions while you still can. And that's when she told me that he wanted to get off early from duty, and he was kind of waiting for her to have me. So he thought, right, there's a procedure they do that hastens the labour. And it's where you reach in and you puncture the amniotic sac.
A sweep.
Pardon?
Mm-hmm. A sweep, they call it. And it's one of the, they sweep it and they can puncture the,
He did it in the wrong place.
Oh, God.
Yeah. It now meant that the water that was supposed to protect me just came out. And my mum said she remembered there was sort of like an, oh, shit, sense in the room. And they were trying to not let her know that something had gone wrong. But my mum was a qualified midwife. So she had a sense that there was something wrong. So now what was happening was now that every time she had the contractions, I didn't have the cushion for the water to protect me. And this went on for 48 hours, that I was being crushed by my mother's, is it the uterus wall or something? Mm-hmm. I was being crushed during this. And my dad wouldn't give permission, which was required in those days, for them to do a cesarean. And my mum and I's life was quite at risk by that point. Now, the reason I told that story is that I now realize that that early experience with water, where water let me down, is why I cannot trust water. I always think the water can't support me. It's going to let me down. Literally, that's what I expect. And I remember that day thinking, that's it. I didn't have a near drowning experience. What happened to me happened in the room. Now, about 4 weeks or so, I had a further insight. Literally last month, the 23rd of April, I had a further insight around this incident that I hadn't been aware of. My dad was so convinced that my mum was going to have a boy because somebody had told him when he was younger, some kind of soothsayer or whatever, or medium, had said, your first child would be a boy. And my dad was so confident that I was going to be a boy. Now, can you imagine, for me, that baby, because babies do understand what's being said in the room. They pick up on anger, laughter, songs. I'm hearing my dad confidently say, no, it's going to be a boy. And my mum's saying, I'm going to have what I'm going to have. And my dad is saying, no, it's going to be a boy. So now imagine what was going through my little mind about the disappointment in my dad's voice or face. That on the day I was to be delivered, which actually should have been today, June 5, because I was delayed by 2 days. Yeah. So what do? It's almost as if it's like somebody who doesn't want to go through a door and you hold on to the hinges. No, I'm not going through. I'm not going, no, I don't want to go through. And it's almost as if my anxiety about my dad's reaction created circumstances beyond my control that led a surgeon to puncture the water. He must have done it many times before and it worked. On this occasion, it went wrong. And for 2 days, I didn't get to face the disappointment of my dad finding out I was a girl. It's theory. But to let you know just how disappointed he was when he got the news. He wasn't relieved that there'd been a healthy delivery.
No.
One of the midwives came out to where he was waiting, because in those days, men didn't go into the room, into the delivery suite. And she said to him, "Congratulations, you've got a baby girl." My dad said, "Are you sure? Go back and check." And she was stunned. She was embarrassed. So she went back in a bit mortified that she made a mistake. And she checked and she came back and said, "It is a girl." This is how powerfully I must have picked up on how he was going to react. And when you think about my name, I got a bit of a weird name, Olu Jimi. But sorry about that really long story.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, you know, along the way, at one point, I had swollen saliva ducts, a condition called Schrodin's, where the body attacks water.
No. Oh,
because
no.
I was still seeing water as the enemy.
Yes. Yeah.
That's literally energy. That there are many reasons why parents may, in vitro, while a girl is in the womb, express a preference for a male child. In my dad's case, it's because somebody whose authority he counted on, he couldn't believe could be wrong. In countries like China, you have the one-child rule. So you really wanted to have a boy. You know, in India, you've got the dowry syndrome system. So you have a girl and you're like, oh man, you just brought a lot of debt to the family, you know. There are so many reasons why there's that preference. And I believe that this can impact. And I remember during my first summit, one of the speakers actually said that there's been a suggestion that when you ask a lady with PCOS, if she knows what the parents wanted, the parents had wanted a boy. And it's amazing when the cells pick up on this and think, wow, how do I fulfill this? How do I not be a disappointment? Who wants to be a disappointment? That the body starts doing what it needs to do to be like what is aspired to. You know, you see your siblings, your male siblings getting preferential treatment. I saw that a lot. You know, you see men earn more. Or in some countries, men can drive. All these little things. And it's enough sometimes to make a woman think, I wish I were a man. Did you ever see the film Labyrinth?
Yeah.
With David Bowie?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Yeah.
A long time ago.
I love that film. And the only reason the goblins were able to take her little brother is because she said it. I wish you would go away to the land of the goblins or something like that. You know, she kept on almost saying it. And they were like, oh, is she going to say it? Oh, she didn't say it. And once again, she'd almost say it. And then when she finally said it, they were punching the air because they now had the permission to take the little boy. They couldn't touch him before that. And that's the power of our thoughts, which get expressed through our words and make things happen. I was going to say a rude word just then, but you know what I mean?
You can.
Make shit happen.
Yeah.
But this is quite often what happens. We make stuff happen by what we think, which turns into what we say out loud.
Or what we don't say, I think.
That's even worse because it's festering.
That's even worse. Then it festers, yes.
Yeah.
And I mean, this
desperate.
isn't like, Jimmy, this is just, I mean, we can expand this into, like you said, all chronic illness, weight gain, like any sort of weight struggles. This is like, I feel like this is so the missing piece. You know, everybody looks to their diet, like you said, to the symptoms, like how can we fix this with exercise and diet, and which is all great. It has its place. I'm a nutritionist, 100%.
Yeah.
Right. But however, this is why I do this video cast, is that there's more to it. And we don't understand the power of our subconscious thinking and our belief system and where these things come from. So I love this.
It is incredible power. Absolutely incredible. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that generational trauma is something that is not spoken about enough. And I think it's hard for people to really understand that and even believe it, that this generational trauma can be passed down. And if you actually start to do some research, things like if a mother is stressed out and worried throughout a pregnancy, that babies come out stressed out, that they are more, prone to stress because they've been affected by all of the hormones that you were just talking about, the cortisol, the adrenaline, the norepinephrine, going into the baby and stressing it out.
Literally.
And this harms it. Babies come out with asthma and other things because they are stressed.
Absolutely. Do you know the other thing? You know, there's been a lot of talk about overweight mothers giving birth to large babies. Now, what makes a woman gain weight? Stress and stress eating, okay? Not eating for two, it's the stress. Now, each time she's exposed to stress and the stress hormones go to the baby, it sends a message to the baby, you need to get ready for a life out there of fighting or running. And those babies are born with super developed muscles. Babies of stressful mothers have larger than average muscles because their body has been prepared for that fight or that flight. You know, and that's why it's so important when a woman with PCOS is pumping money down the IVF route, but she's not addressing what's going on in her body. She's not addressing the stress, which is going to inhibit conception anyway. And then she's now giving birth to this baby who now has a higher risk of a metabolic disorder or type 2 diabetes in their lifetime. You know, it's a very sad cycle, but a very logical one that we're gripped in at the moment. You know, and then you throw in the toxins. You know, the sleep deprivation. Yeah, from the exposure to our phones and things. You know.
Yes, the stress from our phones, the cortisol rush that we get from our phones.
Yeah,
so we become addicted.
I was speaking to an expert today, one of the interviews, and she gave some stats that 100 years ago, the average person got 9 hours sleep. And up to 20 years ago, I think it was 7 hours sleep. And now it's about 4 to 6 hours sleep on average.
Not me, 9. I love my 9 hours.
I do 9 hours in breaks. I'll sleep a bit, wake up, go back to bed.
Yeah. So for somebody that, you know, is connecting to what you're saying and they're thinking, okay, I want to get to the root of the problem. Do we have to go through hypnosis to do that? Or is there something that somebody can, like a tool that we could use to try to uncover what might be stopping us from healing our bodies?
It's an interesting question. There are different tools. What hypnosis will do, it gets you into that state. A bit like when you're sort of dreaming. And you know, you have to get to a certain state in sleep for dreams to naturally happen. And you're not controlling those dreams. And anything can happen in those dreams. And it's all the same thing. In hypnosis, you don't go into sleep. But if you ask your unconscious mind the right questions, then certain memories will sort of come up to the surface. And you'll be like, why did I remember that now? But you know, it doesn't always have to be hypnosis. And that's why I've learned different tools along the way. Some people are so crap scared of hypnosis because they think that they're going to be controlled or that they might get stuck in hypnosis. That has never, ever happened in all the history of hypnosis. No one's ever got stuck. Or they're afraid that they might blurt out something embarrassing that they've forgotten about. Because the media, TV and films has made hypnosis look sexy that way, that, oh my goodness, she just confessed to murder that even she didn't realize she'd done. You know? But there are other things. I mean, there's havening. And havening is, it's like self-soothing. It's self-soothing, and you get yourself into such a relaxed state. It's almost like it reprograms the mind, the amygdala, to perceive a situation in a different way. And it can actually make memories come up. So I remember I was once at an event. It was a conference, and the lady gave a really good talk about something. It was actually about trauma amongst first responders. And she made reference to some paper or document that listed all the diseases that people with first responders are most likely to get later in life. And I thought, I really want to get hold of that. So when she said, now, any questions? I put up my hand and I said, you mentioned that document. Where can we get it? And you know what she said? She just said, Google it. And I felt so small. Like, yeah, of course I could have gone and Googled it, but you've just given a talk, you've mentioned it. I thought I'd ask you. I thought that was unnecessarily rude and humiliating, you know. And I was so crushed, and I remember fighting back the tears. This is just a few years ago. I was fighting back the tears. And somebody there who knew me, when we were leaving for lunch, she said, are you okay, Jimmy? And I couldn't even talk because, you know, all I wanted to do was run to my hotel room and cry. I couldn't talk. And she took me to a corner and said, right, let's start to haven this thing, haven it. And she made me talk my way through it. And you know what happened? I suddenly remembered something from when I was about 5 or 6, where the teacher, who I knew didn't like me, that's always been my belief, she told me off in front of the class. And I was so crushed and humiliated, I put my head down on the desk because it made me cry in public. And I wouldn't bring my head up until school had dispersed. When I knew that everyone had left for the day, that's when I brought my head up, grabbed my bag and left. Nothing you did could make me bring my head up. And that came back to me, that earlier event. And I hadn't thought of it in decades until when I was being havened and we were able to deal, because obviously it was an unresolved trauma for that little me to be humiliated that way in front of a class. So that's havening is one thing. And there's something called swanning. And I love swanning because with swanning, I will just literally, you know, you get the hand to form a swan shape. You can do it actually. Do you want to do it?
I'm doing it.
There'll be no embarrassing disclosures.
No.
Yeah, put it up like that because we can't quite see your hand.
Okay.
Okay, good. Make it nice and limp. Okay. Sorry. Now, you don't have to do anything. And feel free if you want to look at your hand or not. But I right now would like to speak directly to Karen's unconscious mind through that hand. Okay. Now, Karen, as we're doing this, 3 things may happen, 1 or 3. Nothing may happen. You might feel something but not see anything, no movement, or there may be a movement. It's all good. But again, I'd like to, for the next couple of minutes, I'm going to be speaking directly to your unconscious, not you, okay? So speaking to Karen's unconscious mind there, because I know you're there, and I know that even though Karen often thinks she's in control, you are actually the driver there. I know that. And I'd really appreciate it, please, if you could just indicate to us, because this is a chance for Karen to understand a way to communicate with you directly and go right to source. I'd like to ask you if you could just demonstrate to Karen which finger on that hand would you want to move to indicate yes. Remember to breathe, Karen.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. You have that sense of anticipation, and the adrenaline is making that fight or flight. Yeah. But yeah, sorry, yeah. So yeah, again, speaking to you, or actually, could I put it this way to you, Karen's unconscious? If you could take control of her hand and start to move it in any direction you wish, how might you move that hand? Are you feeling
my baby finger keeps jumping up.
See, I can't see that, but see, that's an indication of response. Is your elbow balanced, by the way?
No.
Sorry, I forgot to say that, to balance your elbow.
Okay.
So it's got support. Okay, so let's do it again with it. Now it's balanced, okay? Right. I apologize. I didn't give Karen clear instructions, but you did really well considering. And that shows you have the ability to make the most of whatever resources are available to you. You don't just give up or take any excuse to let go. But I'd like to ask now, just to demonstrate to Karen the power she has by connecting with you, if you could once again take control of that hand and start to move it either towards her face or away from her face, your choice. Karen is not going to interfere. Remembering to breathe, Karen. There goes that finger again. It's interesting. Yeah. Because, you know, as a therapist, I could ask the unconscious mind to do one thing, but it may actually want to do something else entirely. And I just welcome that, whatever it is. I say, thank you for that. So thank you for that finger that you moved there.
It keeps going.
There again. But you see, with that tool, I could ask the unconscious mind and say, this issue, you know, we human beings, we call it PCOS, even though like 50, 60 years ago, we barely had a name for it, but it's been there. But for you, it's a solution to another end. I suspect. Is there any truth in that? And then you might get a movement, or you might get the hands. I'm doing that consciously, okay? But I don't wonder if I could do it unconsciously. Okay, then I'm just going to, while I'm talking to Karen, I'm just going to leave you to do what you like, if you'd like to demonstrate how you communicate. Okay, so I would use it to ask a question. And with one client, I actually asked him, he felt excessively shy with women, and he was getting in the way of him settling down. And I said to him, I asked the unconscious, did this issue start in his lifetime or earlier? And it said, it indicated earlier. And it's like, was it in the previous generation? It was a no. Was it the generation before that? It was a yes. And when I asked him, he said, actually, his great-grandfather broke the family with infidelity. And so now what we needed to do was to reassure his unconscious that he is aware of the impacts of such behavior. And he isn't necessarily going to do what his great-grandfather did. But that's how, even though people aren't present to answer the question, I can say, does this have its roots in? And then I get, also, I think I was probably too busy talking, you know, but yeah, it's one of these days you'll see it happen.
Yes, yes.
But I get amazing answers. I get from my unconscious with the hand movements, yeah.
I would think meditation might help to have those things arise. Like if you went into a meditation with an intention and then just put yourself, because it's very meditative, is kind of hypnotic, yeah. I think. Yeah.
You're so absolutely right.
That could bring it down. So
yeah. The thing about hypnosis and meditation and mindfulness, it's it just stops. It's literally like it sort of like clears the mind. You don't have to go ahead into the future and worry about something that hasn't happened and may never happen. Stay in the present moment. And when you do that, you stop agitating the brain that's going to send the cortisol. And then you've got a state of calm. And during that state of calm is when the body is more likely to repair itself. So inflammation, that is quite common in women with PCOS, they're way too stressed. No matter how much turmeric or whatever they may eat or supplements, if they've still got that stress flooding the system, then the body isn't taking the time to repair those tissues, repair those organs, repair the cysts from the ovaries, which are a part of inflammation. You know?
Yeah.
So, yeah. Well,
we could just keep going, Jimmy, but I should probably.
I was so nervous about this. And yeah. But do you want to know about some of the speakers that we'll be having on the summit?
I do. I would just like, because I'm a guest on your summit. I think this is an amazing summit coming up. So tell us all about what we're getting ourselves into by registering for the PCOS Summit, 3rd annual.
Hey. Well, you know, often what I do is I listen and I follow the discussions of women with PCOS. And when they ask a question over and over again, I think they need answers. And the number of times keto comes up. Does keto work? Oh, it didn't work for me. Oh, no. And that's why I came to someone like you to say, come along and give us the lowdown on keto, you know. There's one speaker, Dr. Felice Gersh. She's talking about oral health and PCOS. Would you think it?
Interesting. Yeah.
Yes.
Wow.
That's a lot of the bacteria in the mouth, if you have the wrong ones, are going to have an adverse effect. And she talks about the kind of foods and the kind of practices and what you need to ask your dentist to look out for, so that you don't have that sabotaging every other good thing. You may be having the best keto or gluten-free diets, but then you've got the wrong bacteria in your mouth, you know, or you've got bacteria in the gut, the wrong bacteria in the gut, actually pooping in your gut and letting out toxins. You know, we got someone talking about stress eating and why that's not good for us. We have, and I'm so happy about it, we have a lady who is talking about fasting, not intermittent fasting, but religious fasting. Because I think right now we're probably just coming out of the Ramadan period, which is when Muslims will eat nothing at all while the sun is up. But once the sun goes down, it's open season. Which, you know, is not too bad thing. They all come together and, you know, we make food a social event. So they all get together and they got all these high carb foods and these oily foods, etc. And everybody piles in. And, you know, in countries like India, they've got such a high rate of PCOS.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Which is, and they've also got a high rate of women working in IT, a masculine industry. A lot of women with PCOS work in high-driven masculine industries. But now what you have during the fasting period, Ramadan, is starvation and no water. You can't even swallow your own saliva during this. Then come nighttime, they're binging, literally binge eating, carbs, all the wrong food.
It's horrible.
Sugary drinks, because they don't think of taking water. And then they're wondering, how come I did 30 days of fasting and I actually weigh more?
Yeah.
They broke every rule in the metabolic
diary.
You know, the metabolic Bible.
Yeah.
So we got this lady talking about the right way to fast and what to do and how to actually be fitter during fasting. We got people talking about sleep. There's a lady talking about sex, PCOS, and the menopause. Because what we do with our bodies now, before menopause, is going to impact on the kind of menopause you have. And menopause can be brutal, even without PCOS, you know. So we got people talking about the right way to get it gluten-free and how you can think you're living a gluten-free lifestyle, but actually the manufacturers, the big industries producing gluten-free food are not strictly adhering to the rules. So gluten could be sneaking into your diary. So it's little things like that to help women understand how things that they do, everyday things, can be sabotaging their bodies. There's even a fertility coach, and she's going to tell us why IVF may not be the only thing left for you, the only choice if you have PCOS. She believes you can get pregnant without IVF.
Wow.
So is this messages of hope?
Totally. And I think, like, even if you don't have PCOS,
Yes.
register, watch this summit, because it sounds amazing and applies to all women because it's about our hormones.
Absolutely, yeah. And like I said earlier, I don't know whether I got PCOS or not because I've never gone for tests. And we say 1 in 5 women have it, but it's probably, it's quite possibly more than that, because many women did not get diagnosed until they hit menopause. And once you stop wanting to try for a baby, no one's looking at PCOS in you. It's like they think it's still there, it hasn't gone. So yeah,
exactly. Wow, this is exciting. So do we have a what's the day? Has registration opened first?
It's kind of opened, yes, although we're still making some tweaks to the website.
Okay, by the time this airs, I think it'll probably be...
It'll be open by the time it airs. It's www.thepcossummit.com.
Easy.
Access is free, but because the interviews are only available, the presentations for a limited time, you have the option to upgrade from a free pass to a VIP pass, which gives you access to all the interviews in audio format, video format, transcripts, and a whole load of wonderful bonuses as well. And every single speaker has offered a free gift in addition to their teaching. It's like freebies galore during the PCOS Summit. Yeah.
I know. I'm giving the free ketogenic meal plan for all these watchers right now. But that's exciting. I'm excited for this. I'm going to put all the links in the show notes so that when this airs, they're all going to be there and you guys can go register for it and take part in the PCOS Summit. But thank you, Jimmy. I loved this conversation. Thank you so much.
Mind over PCOS, isn't it?
Yes, it is, Jimmy.
We'll talk about that next time.
Exactly. We've got, so Jimmy's got something in the makings right now, and we're just going to leave you with mind over PCOS. But thank you, Jimmy, so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me, Karen. I really appreciate it. You've been a wonderful host. Thank you.